I missed that. I'm is that what they're saying in the chat right now?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of the delay, it's hard to catch up. Right, I'm here, guys. Don't worry. Uh, Scarzig and Sqweeby both are have a lot of great things to say, so it's hard to necessarily interject there, but I'll try to give more feedback as I can.
I do know that Duckling has a sub goal going that if he gets to 50, he's doing a full 8-hour ASMR stream. So you guys have that to look forward to if you're able to drop those subs over on his channel.
Yeah, if you want to hear me talking, that's a great way to do it. Support the ASMR stream. At 100, we're actually doing a hot tub stream too, so everything's kind of coming together.
Wait, are you really?
No, no.
Dude, I'll drive out for that, dude. So we have Deep here versus what looks to be an overwhelmed deck. Let me pull up those decks on the arrow side. We're going to be unable to get game sound and unable to, look at the hand as we usually can, but we are able to get the game, so we're thankful for that. We see the Nautilus being drawn here and a Merciless Hunter coming down, so this game is already underway and Overwhelm curving out just like it wants to do.
Yeah, Deep really struggles dealing with these aggressive starts. The Bone Skewer is nice, but you need to get something down with a bit more attack power. The Vile Feast will do wonders to kind of stabilize things, but against a unit with Tough, a unit with 3 HP, it's not going to be enough. Heading into round 4, ASOLid Roamer just does not have any meaningful plays.
Let's find that Dead Bloom probably just in time here.
And do you think, Duckling, that you would just attack with the Dead Bloom Wanderer here immediately? Maybe try to set this Renekton down to Vile Feast range? Or are you just going to try to get the double block? The double block with the Bone Skewer doesn't really matter as much because of the Overwhelm here.
Yeah, it is an interesting call. I do like the attack because it removes the ability to make it vulnerable on the following turn, as well as like reduce its attack and buff up the Renekton. I think it's a good call here probably to go for this attack, but we're definitely already in quite the tough spot here versus Overwhelm.
Yeah, and just looking a little more at this Overwhelm list, we have 1 Sivir in the list, 2 Sejuani, 3 Renekton, and 3 Battle Fury, as well as 2 Ice Shards teched in. Maybe for that Azir-Aurelia matchup, it might not be banned. We also see the Astronaut minion on the side of Arrow, means they're working their way through that event pass. You'll love to see it.
And another threat being developed here with the Ruin Runner. This Dead Bloom Wanderer is staring down a very wide board. At the very least, there is no threat of it getting vulnerable. You're able to block the Merciless Hunter and then perhaps Bone Skewer the Renekton just so you can get some defense and a little bit of healing besides.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the straightforward game plan before that Overwhelms has. It's play units on curve, big units on curve, and then go face. And sometimes it's not as flexible as you want it to be, but other times it's just exactly what the doctor ordered. Seeing a literal triple Vile Feast coming down here, all the mana, trying to deal with that Merciless Hunter, gain 3, and stop for effectively a 7 health swing here, although it is overheal, so it's not going to get the full value of that.
We see very good order and discipline by DC here, pulling with the Renekton first. In this exact case here, where the opponent does have a Vile Feast, it did end up mattering there, as ASOL would be at 1 additional health. Very good hindsight by him.
And so
7 away from Deep, yep.
Yeah, so you try to take the risk here of trying to devour the Renekton. Oh, wait, no, it has to have more HP. My mistake. Like, even if it's even HP, it won't go through. So you're forced to develop the Abyssal Eye here.
We need double Jettison, I guess, drawn, right? If we want to get this Devour up high enough before the swing potentially next turn. It is a Dead Bloom, but we won't have mana to develop both, right?
Yeah. We're gonna be one short, unfortunately, here of the Deep. If the opponent open attacks, the Jettison plus the draw will put us at exactly 16, I believe.
really unfortunate as well with the triple Vile Feast draw that was pretty bricky. We only got a Sea Scarab. The Jaw Hunter was tossed. The early mid-game units that could put up somewhat of a fight just weren't present, and now Sivir is coming down to top out this curve, and this looks to be a fantastic open attack for Arrow. Goes even further, developing the Sejuani. With Vulnerable now being granted to that unit, it provides a good meal for Renekton to get a further buff on top of everything else. The Spiders do a great job of blocking in other matchups, but versus Overwhelm, it's still just, it's such a detriment, such a liability.
We're one off, right, of being able to go deep before playing Devour. We could be getting rid of this Sejuani, this Renekton, this Ancient Yeti, but we're just not going to be able to hit it in time. So unfortunate to see that you're just so close to deep and yet so far away, and you're staring down the face of just so much overwhelmed damage.
Floor of the Depths does draw a Sea Monster, of course. You try to combine that with the Jettison, but I think you're still one off regardless. If you develop the Deadbloom Wanderer, you're going to potentially heal for 3, but this is just way too much Overwhelm coming through. It just won't matter. I think depending on the way the attack lines up, we could still get some quick attack sprinkled onto a couple of these other units, and that might force a Solid Roamer to block in a way that they don't want to with the Deadbloom Wanderer here.
Yeah, I would expect to see the Jettison come down as well as the Bone Skewer, probably blocking with the Deadbloom Wanderer onto the Sivir so that the Overwhelm, it's not happening there if the unit is removed. Then you're giving the 3 extra health as well to the Abyssal Eye, but I haven't done the quick math yet to tell if that's enough to stop this onslaught here that Arrow is presenting with Overwhelms.
I know. We're eternally blessed by the Oracle's Eye, just letting us know whether these lethals come through. Having to stop and calculate the math would be, it would make this game way harder to play. But you can see right here, again, Arrow is setting this up to where the quick attack on the Sivir and then the Renekton taking advantage of the vulnerable here means that with the extra damage going through, you aren't going to be able to put this lifesteal at the top of the stack that you want. And the level up indeed does come through on the Sivir here.
How much overwhelm damage are we looking at? That's always what you have to be figuring out here. I do think there is a way to avoid this lethal. Yep, and you can opt just to play Jettison. You could also be going for that Bone Skewer play. I think, Duckling, what would you think about that Bone Skewer block with the Deadbloom onto the Sivir? I guess you're not getting the... Yeah, I don't know. I think that would be a good play as well, actually.
Yeah, both have consideration here. I mean, we are able to stop the lethal without using the Bone Skewer. It's just kind of, do we see ourselves using that in the future in a better situation? With the Sivir being leveled up here, being able to give Spell Shield to everything on the attack, we won't be able to use it again on the opponent's attack, most likely here. So we'll probably have to use it on our turn. We're not really going to have a unit to do so. So there might have been a consideration to use it. Also, it does eliminate your top deck, and that might have been why we didn't see it come out.
We are living here through the Overwhelm Onslaught, but at what cost? We've lost everything in the house. We're having to sell at auction here just to stay alive. We're at 2 HP, full board still for the Arrow side. Nautilus can come down next turn, as well as some Devour and a free Scarab. Is it going to be enough, though?
I think that what you're really hoping for here is for the Nautilus to hold it down, maybe trying to draw the, you're trying to draw like Riptides or something to throw it back. But because Arrow has built up this wide board, there isn't going to be that consideration for not just open attacking, right? And then as Duckling mentioned, you get that spell shield granted to everyone.
Yep, and Roamer playing it a little slow here with the Devour, trying to see if there's a bigger threat that can be coming down. Hard to tell if there could be a bigger threat in the deck. I mean, this is a very threatening board already. What would you guys expect to see the Devour coming down on here?
Renekton, it plays around... Elixir of Iron or Shapestone. It doesn't. There's nothing. There's no way to play around Troll Chant, unfortunately. Actually, no. Wait. We play around. It plays around Troll Chant too. I apologize.
Oh yeah, because the
And the
boost.
Renekton's the one that gets buffed up here, getting the +3/+3 stat line. So I think that's the most reasonable target here. It doesn't have Spell Shield, of course.
Oh,
But
it plays around one Troll Chant, but does it play around double Ice Shard?
Shard
Brutal
cheeky
for the lethal.
This was a
that's
line
always
that
rough.
we weren't even considering. Ice Shard being a new card that's been teched into this list to help it out in swarmier matchups or Aurelia Azir. And it comes through with just that little bit of extra burn every once in a while. So game one, going to Arrow, the overwhelm curve was too much for Deep to handle.
Yep, there are 2 Ice Shards available in the deck, and 2 needed to get lethal there, and 2 had on the side of Arrow, so very well played, being able to get Roamer down to that 2 mana, or 2 health breakpoint rather, but with the board still available, it may have been a little bit of overkill there on the overwhelm side.
And as you mentioned, just 1 or 2 turns off of getting deep, getting that big power spike turn with the Devourers, and it just wasn't enough. And so going into this next match, Arrow, if you look at this champion and you look at this region combination, you might be thinking Dawn Spiders, but no, this has a new face. It's Cloud Matron.
And I think Duckling is smiling down on us from the Lady of Cythria Clouds. Duckling, how do you feel about this deck making it all the way to the semifinals of our tournament?
I love it, and I think it's a very underrated tournament deck. I really do. It's just, it does really well into a lot of decks that we'd expect to see in a tournament format, and it struggles on ladder because Aurelia Azir, just in general, is a really tough matchup for it. But when you can just ban that deck out consistently and run into decks like Deep, like Demacia, ASOL, and even TLC to an extent, just all decks that this deck tends to really prosper against. So really happy to see DC coming out here, and also he's on the mono Elise version. So there's about a million ways you can build this deck, but
it's something that us competitive players know all too well, and that's that decks that do well on ladder don't necessarily do well in tournament, and decks that don't do well on ladder may be amazing in tournament. If you're able to get that ban, it kind of changes everything. You're able to build a cohesive lineup that works together, and Arrow is finding a way to fit this Cythria deck into his lineup, and to great success so far. So who would you be giving the favorability here in the matchup to? I'm not quite familiar with the matchup tables of this deck.
So definitely DC here. As long as he's running draw to make it consistent to get to the combo. That's the thing about the deck, is that the combo feels pretty consistent because you literally only need 2 cards, right? You need Matron and you need Cythria. And what tends to happen, why this matchup is favored, is because Deep doesn't really pop off until turn 7, and we can typically get our Matron down pretty consistently by turn 7 as well, and our units are just as big as the Nautilus and bigger than all of their units, and you just tend to overrun the Deep deck.
Because the Lady of Clouds deck is, still considered a sort of a sleeper list. Players recognize its strengths, but don't like some of its more polarized matchups. It hasn't had a big enough tournament presence quite yet for players to actually start teching against it. Deep has been known in certain metas to maybe run Ruination from like way back in the day, right? This is an archetype that's always been very dependent on what other decks are in the meta to decide what to bring. And right now, the lists are just trying to focus more on their own win condition and run a sprinkle of AoE in order to survive against more aggressive lists, and are just hoping that they are going to be the bigger one of the two in the match, and can't really take that way of countering this one just yet. So ASOLid Roamer here does have their work cut out for them, is doing a good job developing, I think, a pretty decent curve as we head into the mid game, however.
Yeah, we're going to see that new card, Sea Scarab. Everybody in Deep loves it. Doing work, just turbo getting you that Deep buff. It's quite a good board right now from the side of Roamer. You have those early units that you're happy to see. Hitting a Y'all Hunter is going to add even more creation of those sea monsters, and actually feels comfortable enough here to put down a lure and hits another Scarab. That is so huge, just going to be doubling the effect of those death triggers and tosses.
The Lady of Clouds list does need to keep a board alive, so you have units to double the stats on. And if Solid Roamer does hit this turbo curve, gets deep very quickly, you can get the Devourers to, come down, do the early work to clear the board, and keep Arrow from getting that wide setup. And then perhaps, a bunch of 5, 6s, and 7, 7s might be enough to close out. And we do see the Terror of the Tides being developed by the being granted by the Jaw Hunter. And if Arrow does find the brick happening to them where the Cythrias or the Spectral Matrons are down at the bottom of the list, that could present the window that Roamer does need to just force through that fearsome damage.
I love this play here on the side of Arrow, just getting rid of the Scarab and getting rid of the other Scarab as well, utilizing the full power of that single and saying, I cannot let you have these toss engines on the board for very long at all, or this is going to get out of hand. So, Duckling, what are you thinking about the state of the game here? It's looking like the Cythria side is able to stabilize a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. And this is exactly what you want to be doing. You want to slow down the deep progression as much as possible. Unfortunately for Arrow, ASOLid did just top deck the Jettison, so they will be getting deep very quickly here. We can't see Arrow's hand here, but if they have a Cythria and a Matron, they are still in plenty fine shape. And I hope, for their sake too, that they have a backup single combat, because that does usually end up being pretty important, that you have some way of dealing with an atrocity or like an elusive fish pushing for lethal. Fortunately, he's pretty healthy here, so he might not even need it, but usually an important consideration in the matchup as well.
Yeah, that Jettison came in at the exact right time, huh? Just able to completely brick that attempt of a Vile Feast to stop the Devour. And now the board state, we are left with a 7-5 here on the side of Roamer, and we are deep. Choo-choo, full sea monster train is in motion.
No Nautilus to come down on top of this, but still does have a couple Jaw Hunters. And this means that you're going to still have more threats to develop on top of everything else. And, ooh, if you're worried about the Mask Mother, yeah, you're just going to devour this right now.
I think that's a good call here from ASOLid the Roamer. A real heads-up play.
What? Oh!
A concerted strike. All right.
Unfortunately, at 19 health. Yeah.
Wants to keep it. Says, because that is a strike, the ephemeral unit will die anyway once that completes. And Arrow is just doing their best now to live against these sea monsters. I think that kind of gives us some insight that the combo might actually be missing. Solid Roamer's picking up on this and now is considering Terror of the Tides to kind of push through on this turn.
The Tides is a high-risk, high-reward play here. If there isn't an answer on the side of Arrow, it's just such a beast to keep on the field. But if there is an answer in the form of a Matron and then a challenge, you are giving up that win condition. So it's a bit of a tough call here to make. Roamer saying, maybe I want to play it. Do I want to play it? It'll be interesting to see what he opts for. Y'all Hunters, maybe the safer play this turn? But nope, decides to slam it and say, you have to deal with this now, or we are just going to smack the damage right to face.
We really got to push this edge while we potentially still have it, and try to set up, to the best of our ability, what could either be an elusive lethal or an atrocity lethal.
And from a position like this, because Terror of the Tides does debuff the enemy board, without the combo specifically being dropped in response to this, all of the rest of the early mid-game, the Elise, the Proteges, aren't going to be enough. Even the Screeching Dragon gets debuffed, and so this is going to be 16 damage being forced through, potentially.
There is Sharp Sight available as a 3 of in the arrow list. If they have it, they're opting to not use it, but they may not have it, just taking the full brunt of that damage, going down to 4 HP.
Does he have it is the question.
Hovering a spell here, probably trying to go for a glimpse. Still looking for the combo potentially.
Yep, good call.
So late into the game, this is going to be sidestepped with the Bone Skewer. Romer had the right call, had the read, and said the Terror of the Tides needs to come down now. Based on your last few plays, I know that the combo is not there, and I need to keep it that way. So here we go, Stalking Shadows now being used in combination with the Bone Skewer to get a unit right back. And the elusive lethal that was prophesied by Duckling is coming to fruition here.
As Duckling says it will happen in our tournament. That's what we've learned thus far. It's going to be very hard to stop this elusive win con next turn, especially given that we probably found out there's no Sharp Sight available right now on the side of Arrow, so it's going to be very hard to deal with these 6/6 elusive eyes.
Can't develop it just yet because of the challenger, and so Solid Roamer just taking a slower approach here.
Something worth noting that I think is pretty great is that deep players, man, do they love deep. Whether or not the deck is, solid in the meta or not, they are loyal to the deck. Right now, it is definitely solid in the meta. It performed well at Seasonals. A lot of people brought it, and we see Romer here repping the Bilgewater board as well. So you love to see players just dedicating themselves to an archetype and absolutely mastering it. That's what we're seeing here. Open attack for so much damage. More than is needed, and Romer looking like they're going to bring this game home.
So this is going to be game 2 being closed out now. The set is now 1-1 here in the semifinals. The winner of this third game will be taking on Reborn in the finals. It'll be just a few moments before we get into that game.
Yeah, and I mean, both of these semifinal sets have gone to 3 games. I mean, just absolutely close games that we've been seeing here all along the way during our tournament. Pretty great. The players are showing us some absolutely top-level play so far.
Yeah, I love to see it. It's great to see all of the games going all the way, or all the matches going all the way to the full set. It makes it a real nail biter and really emphasizes the strength of the players as well as the decks that they brought.
I do have a bit of a funny anecdote here before we jump into this next game of Overwhelms. We got raided by Jay Doza yesterday, and at the end of the cast, he hops in after the raid and says, "Oh my god, what is that card? Trevor Snoozebottom, is this being played in the tournament?" He was just flabbergasted that one of our players, B, brought this Elusives deck, and it's just goes to show these players are bringing what they like. It may be decks that we haven't seen so much before in competitive settings, but they're doing well with a wide variety of decks right now, and there hasn't been as much Aurelia Azir as you would expect based on the latter play rates. So really cool to see just a diversity of decks being brought here, and it's looking like we're playing Overwhelms into that Lady of Cythria deck as well.
So with Lady of Clouds now
yeah.
having to face down not just a list that it wants to be bigger than in the late game, but needing to survive the early and mid game, it's not about getting your combo. It's about getting the Radiant Guardians. It's about getting that Dark Mother, the Darkwater Scourge, Mask Mother combo. And Solid Romer, unfortunately, does not have an early curve to take advantage of this lull.
And there's just so much healing available in the deck as well. On the arrow side. So Duckling, what do you think? How is that healing going to be utilized later in the game? Is that going to pose a threat or a problem rather for this Overwhelm side?
Also, generally, this is a matchup where the Overwhelm side is going to be slightly favored. It's not like a hard favor per se, but typically the biggest problem is that the Arrows deck really revolves around getting the combo off, and ASOL's deck pops off a couple turns before that combo usually comes down. and when the units are still small, typically tends to be the problem. As you mentioned, though, things like Radiant Guardian as well as Mass Mother Scourge can definitely buy the time that Arrow needs.
And here, going into the mid game, Arrow does indeed have some development, some defense. 4 HP on the Laurent Protege does stop a bit of this overwhelm. It's just that there's not really a lot that you can do. The last game, it was very late getting the combo. We didn't see any Oblivious Islanders, no Mobilize to accelerate that combo any further. Darkwater Scourge essentially just being played out here to keep the, this aggressive swing at bay.
Do you like playing the Darkwater Scourge here, Duck, or do you feel like it, oh, that makes a lot more sense now. Yep.
Yeah, with the single combat. And just to refresh my memory on the list, this version actually is not running the Oblivious Islander or Mobilize acceleration package. It's just looking to have a stronger mid-game package and get to that combo naturally. With the
I do have to say Arrow's
dragon.
version of the list. Arrow's version of the list is going to be like better tech for this matchup than the more common list that you see for this archetype. But still definitely going to have a time here, especially with this curve that we see out of ASOL. This is pretty much the nuts.
Yeah,
and as we
go for it.
I was just going to say, as we head into this next round, we have Ruin Runner potentially being threatened. We're going to get Sejuani on top of this. And this is where the defensive units that have been developed by Arrow are going to start to crumble.
Yeah, I was saying those mid-game units that didn't look so great at the beginning of the game are now coming online, and they're going to be able to curve out. I mean, we have Sejuani available, we have a Ruin Runner available, and these are large threats that have to be dealt with from Arrow's side.
Screeching Dragon just going to even things out here. It feels bad that your unit with so much HP has to take a hit like that, but boosting up to 5 means that you're able to threaten a lot harder to trade up into the overwhelm units in exchange for the HP you'll be taking in response.
Yeah, I do like this Sejuani play here. It's going to allow you to trade very effectively. Screeching Dragon, such a scary card, as well as that attack buff. It's as it continues to grow, can threaten some of your key units. So double vulnerable here, and just going to try to keep the board as thin as possible, realizing that those buffs are going to come down onto the board as the game gets later. And we do see a Sharp Sight being played here. And a double sharp. Wow, that's a bit of a blowout here. The attack is not going the way that Roamer had wanted it to go.
And you can just see how much pressure that Arrow is under to commit that really important combat trick just to keep this Elise up, just to save some damage. And I'm wondering if this means, hey, I just need to keep some board alive because I have the combo. Just going to attack here, cash things in. This doesn't seem to be the case. If you've got the Lady of Clouds combo in hand, you actually want to preserve your board a lot more, but just going to cash in the Protege instead.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many resources still available on the side of Roamer. Now we see a Radiant Guardian coming down, going to be able to offer some lifesteal and maybe a little bit of stabilization, but just so many options still on the Roamer side. A lot of value to take this game into the later turns.
This is key here. Trading the Radiant, or trading the 2/4 there Challenger to set up the Radiant Guardian to make sure that he doesn't die this turn, which will allow one more turn for Arrow to have the Matron combo. We got to see if they have the units as well. The hand size is getting kind of small.
Roamer with the exhaust is going to allow the Radiant Guardian to get pulled from the back line, mitigate some of that healing, and a little bit of hesitation, but decides to pull the trigger on the Battle Fury. Going to force through as much damage as possible here.
I would have liked to see a little bit of a different ordering, just in case there was another Sharp Sight. You could have stopped one overheal. Not the end of the world, but ordering there, it could matter in some situations. Still 2 mana available. Are we going to go for a Rockhopper or Ruthless Raider? Looks like Rockhopper going to try to weaken the development on the side of Arrow here in the next turn.
This looks like a combo if I've ever seen it. Oh.
Are we digging?
He's searching.
Digging with stalking.
No instant pick.
Not whiffing is a good sign, but not choosing immediately is maybe not a good sign.
There can be some really specific hard choices that the Stalking Shadow can offer you. Do I want extra Scourge? Do I want another Radiant Guardian? Do I want to try to get a second Mask Mother? But just throws down the Hapless Aristocrat.
Is that what you want to see off the Stalking? I don't know.
This this could still be combo here. That could have been ideal because he wants to fill up the board. So we'll see. Yep, there it is.
And it is optimal. You get an extra unit with 2/2 Challenger, and it's going to summon a unit on its death. So actually looking a lot better, making me eat my words there.
And now
no Troll Chant out of ASOL either. So these trades are going to be efficient into Arrow's favor. Unfortunately, he can't push for lethal with the 12 attack unit, as the opponent would still have 1 health left over.
Just barely able to make it happen. All of these stats and these challenge units line up beautifully into Solid Roamer's board. And just when you think that all hope is lost, of course, the Lady of the Clouds descends to save the day.
I have been sleeping on this deck because, wow, that combo looks so powerful. The whole board of Roamer just instantly gone, and all of a sudden, all those cards we had turns ago, feeling like we were up on value, that has gone by the wayside, and we have a 12-12 a fearsome challenger on the side of Arrow. I mean, that's tough to get through here with these overwhelmed units.
Yeah, and then look at this. Solid Roamer just being forced to develop even further to keep up with these challenger units. At 1 HP, even this Spiderling would be lethal potentially. The Troll Chant shows up just a round too late, and we know that there is a real Lady of Clouds in the hand that can be summoned that will double these stats once again.
This is game 3, 1 HP. Last set we were in, it went to game 3, 1 HP. These players are playing their hearts out today, giving us absolute gems of games, and they're coming down to the wire every single time. It is amazing to see. I'm having a blast, guys.
And I know that Arrow is also enjoying themselves after being able to just barely stabilize and get that combo after it was missing in action during that last game. Lady of Clouds is now going to come through, and we've got a 24/24 Spectral Matron ready to swing through.
Yeah, you hate to see it if you're ASOL. You love to see it if you're Arrow. The turn's pretty much played out there perfectly for him into the setup here for the combo. Very well played from both sides. And it looks like Arrow will be going into the finals against Reborn.
Wow, what a set.